You know, it looked like it was gonna rain and it was drizzling a little bit.
You know what they say, Judge?
What
Let's
did,
say you get a weather report. No, you go inside and you
They're
don't see
gonna start
anything.
quoting me.
And then the clouds are kind of rumbling and you go back outside, Judge.
Mhm.
We believe it may have rained. And I think,
no, I think what is happening is somebody has called the fire department. They pulled out a hose and they just, or maybe it's very hot and people have turned on the hydrants.
There you
I am so happy you're up there, Judge, and not, you know.
go.
That can happen.
Are judges exempt from jury duty or do you get jury duty summons?
Oh, we do. There have been some that I've received it. I'm still waiting for mine. I would love to be on a jury. Yes, we're ready.
All rise for the jury.
All right, everyone, please be seated. All right, ladies and gentlemen, you did receive an oath to take downstairs, but I'm going to give you a different oath, and that oath is for this specific trial. So if you all could raise your right hands for me, please. Do you and each of you solemnly swear or affirm in the case of the state of Texas versus Jesse Hinojo, you will a true verdict render according to the law and the evidence, so help you God? All right, you can lower your hands. State.
In the name and by authority of the state of Texas, the grand jury of Bexar County, state of Texas, duly organized, impaneled, and sworn as such at the September term 2020 of the 187th Judicial District Court of said county in said court at said term, do present in and to said court that in the county and state aforesaid and interior to the presentment of this indictment, count one. On or about the first day of November 2018, Jesse Hinojo, hereinafter referred to as defendant, did intentionally and knowingly cause the sexual organ of Christina Hinojo, a child who was younger than 14 years, to contact the sexual organ of the defendant. Count two. On or about the first day of November 2018, Jesse Hinojo, hereinafter referred to as defendant, did intentionally and knowingly engage in sexual conduct with Christina Hinojo, a child younger than 17, by touching the breast of Christina Hinojo with the intent to arouse or gratify the sexual desire of any person against the peace and dignity of the state.
All right, to each of those counts, how do you plead? All right, you may be seated. State, do you have opening statements?
Yes, Your Honor.
You may proceed.
Thank you. May it please the court and defense. Family is everything. We all grow up hearing that. And family is everything until you're betrayed. You're gonna hear from Christina Hinojo, Jesse's cousin. She's gonna tell you about how when she was 12 years old, Jesse came to live with her and her family for a while to help him out. And while they were living together, you're going to hear about how he came into her room and started making the moves on her. How he took off her clothing, how he touched her breasts, and how he attempted on several times to insert his penis into her vagina instead of just making contact with her vagina and his penis. She's going to tell you that she didn't know what to do or say, and so she said nothing. She said nothing until she finally, in the midst of a mental health crisis, told someone, hey, I've been abused, I need help. And it's not until she went to get interviewed by a child safe interviewer, who you'll hear from as well, Sam Abrego, that she finally told him about everything that she'd been put through and had been keeping inside. for a year before saying anything. That's simply what this is. A story of family and betrayal. And at the end of it, we're gonna ask that you find him guilty.
Right. Defense, any opening statements?
Yes, sir. Please, Cole. Yes. Good afternoon. I said before, my name is John Reitmeyer, assisted by Christine Brown, represent Chesapeake. These cases are tough. We all are in a violent situation. You're gonna have to listen to this. You're gonna have to listen to details. You're also gonna have to listen to a lack of details. You know, I went to go pick up my son from school the other day, and for aftercare. Usually when I go in there, at first I have to get an ID card. I want to make sure I know who I am and they're not letting someone go off with some string. Yeah, no problem. Understand? That's what we do. After a while, they get to know my face. I don't have to show my ID card anymore. Right? So I go to pick him up, and there's somebody new at the front desk, and she asked to see me. And I was just like, yeah. I gave him the ID card, no problem. Got in the car and I sat down. I felt so silly because they're just trying to protect our kids. I think we can all agree we want to protect you. And when we think about a case like this, aggravated sexual assault of a child, I really have a hard time coming up with anything else in the penal code that describes all the crimes in the state of Texas that is worse than that. But I can tell you one thing that is worse than being charged with aggravated sexual assault of a child. That is being wrongfully accused of aggravated sexual assault of a child. Being wrongfully accused of indecency by conduct. You're going to hear my client has denied every allegation from the get-go. And my position to you is that when you boil this case down to nuts and bolts, you're not going to hear about any physical evidence. There's nothing to physically prove that this act happened. It is going to be an allegation. Allegation told to a couple people. And the state is going to ask you to convict on that. I'm going to ask you, keep the minds open. Listen to everything. Listen to what's said. Listen to what's not said. And at the end, I believe you will find the reasonable doubt necessary to say, Jesse Hinojo is not.
Thank you. Witness?
State calls Christina Hinojo. You want to go ahead, you can adjust your microphone if you need to. That way you don't have to speak real loud, but that way we can all hear you, okay? And then just make sure you answer verbally whenever we ask a question, okay?
Yes, ma'am.
Can you go ahead and spell your last name for the court reporter?
Hinojo.
How old are you currently?
I'm 17.
Where do you go to school?
I go to Breckenridge.
What grade are you in?
I'm a junior in high school.
What's your favorite subject?
Forensics.
Forensics. What type of class, or what do you guys study in forensics?
Right now we're studying hair analysis.
Is this like a science course that they offer there?
Yes, ma'am.
Do you do any other activities?
I play double bass.
How do you like that?
It's going really well.
What kind of music do you guys play when you play double bass?
Anything really.
Okay. Do you do classical or they like you do more modern stuff?
More classical.
Who all do you live with currently?
I go back and forth between my mom and dad.
Are they divorced?
Yes, ma'am.
How many siblings do you have?
I have 7.
Okay. Where do you fall in that age and your siblings? Are you like the oldest, the youngest?
I'm second oldest.
Second oldest. How young is your youngest sibling?
He is 2 years old.
So a big range.
Yes, ma'am.
So let's go back to when you were 12. Would that be about 2018?
Yes, ma'am.
Who all lived with you in 2018?
My oldest brother, both my parents, mm, both my sisters, and another younger brother.
How old was your younger brother then?
I have to say about 3.
Okay, about 3. And you were 12, correct?
Yes, ma'am.
How old were your sisters?
My sister was about, uh, my younger sister was a newborn, and my second sister was about, I want to say 9.
And so it's your older brother than you as being the second oldest,
Yes,
correct?
ma'am.
Okay. During 2018, did anyone else live with you for a time?
A couple of family members were in and out, on my dad's side.
Do you know someone by the name of Jesse Hinojo?
Yes, ma'am.
And how do you know Jesse Hinojo?
He is my cousin,
Is he older or younger than you?
older.
Do you know about how much older he is?
Mom, more than 10 years, I
More than
think.
10 years? Okay. So when you were 12, he would be about 22.
Yes, ma'am.
And do you see Jesse in the courtroom today?
Yes, ma'am.
Can you point him out and identify an article of clothing he's wearing?
Uh, khakis.
Can you
Uh,
point him out? Let the record reflect that the witnesses identified the defendant. Did Jesse ever live with you in 2018?
Yes, ma'am.
How long?
I want to say 3 months, maybe more.
Had he ever stayed with you guys long-term before, or was this the first time?
The first time of my knowledge, I don't remember him being there before that.
What was your relationship like with Jesse before he moved in?
Distant cousins. We only saw each other family reunions.
What was it like when he moved in? Just at first.
It was like having a roommate, like he was just there.
He was just there, yeah. How big was this house? How many bedrooms?
3 bedrooms.
Did you have your own bedroom or did you share with someone?
I shared with my younger brother.
Your brother, who you think was about 3 at that time?
Yes, ma'am.
Did you each have your own bed or what was the setup in that bedroom?
Yeah, we each had our own bed.
Where was Jesse sleeping when he was staying there?
In a room in the back. It's not connected to the house.
Okay.
He stayed with my brother, my oldest brother.
Okay, so your older brother had a kind of a room outside of the house and then Jesse stayed in there with him. Is that what you're saying?
Yes, ma'am.
You said it was kind of like having just an extra roommate when Jesse first moved in, correct?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. Did you guys hang out? Like did you guys start to spend more time together once he was living there?
Yes, ma'am.
What kinds of stuff would you guys do?
We would talk a lot. We would hang out like just outside or in the kitchen or things like that.
So just normal stuff.
Yeah.
At some point, did that change? Like, did the dynamic of your relationship change?
Yes.
And how did it change?
Um, it got inappropriate.
Do you recall, I know we're talking about something in 2018. Do you recall about what time of year he moved in?
I want to say April, around then.
So then he was there for a few months.
Yeah.
So when he moved in, when did things, as you say, start to get inappropriate? How long after he moved in?
I don't remember.
So when you say inappropriate, can you please describe to us the first time something was inappropriate between you and him?
A conversation we were having. Um,
What kind of conversation?
can't, I can't remember.
Do you remember the topic of conversation or why you felt it was inappropriate?
It was gesturing sex.
Who was gesturing sex?
Jesse.
When you say gesturing, what do you mean?
It got we talked about I'm sorry, I can't.
Have you ever had to testify before, Christina?
No, ma'am.
How are you feeling right now?
Very nervous.
It's okay. Just take a breath. If you need to take a break, just please let the court know, okay? If it gets too much. Well, we'll come back to this, okay? So you were talking about first conversation. Can you talk about the first time did anything physically inappropriate ever happen between you?
He would touch my thigh.
Started with touching your thigh. Was that over the clothes or under the clothes?
Over the clothes.
And when you say your thigh, where on the thigh are we talking about? Closer to your knee or closer to your hip?
Closer to my hip.
What was the context of this happening? Were you guys sitting together? Like, how did it start with him touching your thigh?
We were sitting by each other.
Do you recall where you were sitting?
The living room.
What happened after he touched your thigh?
I got uncomfortable and I just got up and walked away.
Why were you uncomfortable?
I never experienced something like that.
Someone touching you that high on your thigh? Did you say anything or did he say anything when you got up?
No, neither of us said.
What's the next time something happened that made you uncomfortable or that you felt was inappropriate?
I don't remember.
At any point, did he touch you somewhere that he should not have touched you?
Yes, ma'am.
Can you please tell me about that? How did he touch you and where?
The first time was his hand, with his hand.
And where did he touch you with his
in between my legs.
hand? Was that over your clothes or under your clothes?
Under my clothes.
When you say between your legs, can you describe what you mean by that? What's a word you would use to describe that?
I don't understand the question.
When you say he touched you between your legs, would it be part of your privates or part of like you're touching your legs or something like that?
My privates.
And you said under your clothes, correct?
Yes, ma'am.
Did anything else happen that time?
No.
What's another time? At any point, did he touch you on the upper part of your body?
I was groped a couple times.
When you say groped, what do you mean by that?
His hands were on my chest.
Your chest as in your breast or something else?
My breast.
Was that over the clothes or under the clothes?
Over the clothes.
Where did that occur? Do you recall? What
No, ma'am.
was it at your house?
Yes, ma'am.
And were all the interactions between you two, were these in the house or did anything ever happen outside the house?
They were in the house.
At the time, were both your parents working or were they at home? Like what was their working situation? Do you remember?
My mom was working a lot. I'm not sure what to say about my dad.
Okay. Was he at the house though, or did he leave the house from time to time?
A couple of times he was there.
Were you and your siblings left at the house from time, or was there always kind of someone present with y'all?
Yeah, we were mostly left with my oldest brother.
How old was your oldest brother at the time?
I want to say 20, maybe.
But he also had the room that's outside,
That's
not
fine.
connected to the house. Okay. Were you left alone with your other siblings and Jesse during the time that he lived there?
Yeah.
So we talked about some times that you were touched on your breast. Can you describe what else occurred between the two of you?
Can you rephrase the question?
Sure. What's something else that was inappropriate that happened between the two of you?
One night, we stayed up late talking in the garage, and he had asked me for gum. So I went to my room to get the gum that was in my room. He followed, and when we made it to my room, he closed the door and turned off the lights. And um, he laid me down on my bed, and we were in a position where he was
I'll go ahead and stop you, Christina. We can kind of walk through it, okay?
yes,
So when you guys went into the room, this is the room you shared with your 3-year-old brother, correct?
yes,
Do you recall if he was in the room or not?
no, ma'am.
And then you said that Jesse shut the door.
Yes, ma'am.
Where was your bed kind of located? Was your bed located by the door, across the room? Like, where was your bed located in the room?
It was by the door.
How big was the bed? Do you remember?
20.
So you went to the bed and he turned off the lights, you said.
Yes, ma'am.
What happened next?
He laid me down, and in the position we were in, he pulled he pulled me by my legs to where my bum was at the edge of the bed.
Okay.
And he pulled my pants down and pulled his pants down.
When he pulled them down and he pulled you to the edge of the bed, you said, was he standing or was he on the bed with you?
He was standing.
And then you said that he took both your pants off, correct?
Yes,
Did he remove anything else or just your pants?
My underwear came off along with my pants.
What about for him?
I know he unbuckled his pants, but I couldn't see if he pulled down
His underwear?
Yeah.
Okay, because you said he turned off the lights, correct? What happened after that, after your pants were pulled off?
I could feel his hand touching his private part while he touched mine.
When you say his private part, are you referring to his penis?
Yes, ma'am.
How could you feel that he was touching himself? How close were you guys at this point?
He was pretty much against me, kind of like holding my leg down or pinning it to the bed, while his other hand was touching his
You can say
penis.
private, yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. And you said that he was touching you?
Yes, ma'am.
And what part of your body was he touching?
Yeah, my private parts.
And what happened after that?
We were interrupted by a family member.
What family member?
Um, mm,
Or how
my-
were you interrupted?
a knock at the door.
How did Jesse react when there was a knock on the door?
Frantically pulled his pants up, and I yeah,
Did that family member, whoever was knocking, did they come in? Or what
no,
happened after that?
the door was locked. After I think the third knock, no response, they eventually went away, and after they went away, Jesse walked out of my room.
So is that why you don't really know for sure who was knocking?
Yeah.
Was there another time that things were sexually inappropriate between the two of you?
Um, I was hanging out in the back room.
The
With
back
them.
room that your brother and Jesse shared?
Yes, ma'am.
What happened there?
Um, we I was sitting on the edge of the bed and Jesse was laying in bed. This was a king size bed, so there's a good gap between us. On the edge I was sitting at was like a desk where my brother uh, would keep um, his laptop. And I was watching things on his laptop. Eventually he went away. He
When you
left
say he went away, who do you mean?
my brother, and it was just me and Jesse in the room. And I don't remember exactly how we got to this point, but uh, he was on top of me, and um,
What was he doing when he was on top of you?
touching my private part.
Your vagina, your breast, something else?
My vagina.
Were you clothed? Or had your clothes been taken off?
I was fully clothed.
Was he touching over or under the clothes?
He kind of went through, if that makes sense, like slid to the side.
Okay, so he kind of slid the clothes to the side.
Yeah.
Or what happened next?
Um, I don't remember how long it went on for, but we eventually one of my younger siblings came into the back room and he got off of me. And
I'm sorry.
walked away.
Would you repeat that, please?
Um,
I didn't hear that.
Eventually one of my younger siblings walked in and he got off me and I walked away.
Do you recall which younger sibling it was?
No, ma'am.
And you said that your younger siblings at that point were about 9, 3, and a newborn, correct?
Yes, ma'am.
And you guys were still fully clothed when they walked in?
Yes, ma'am.
Now, when this stuff would happen, were you guys kissing or talking or anything, or what was happening?
think we were kissing.
Did Jesse always kiss you when these things would happen?
No,
But sometimes?
Yeah.
Was there ever any other time that you guys were together in which all your clothes came off?
no, ma'am.
Was there ever a time he touched you with anything other than his hand?
It was the time where when he came into my room, when he was touching himself, he kind of rubbed it against my private part.
When you say rubbed it against your private parts, what do you mean rubbed what?
He rubbed his private parts against my private parts.
I know this is an awkward question, but can you please describe what you felt from his private part? Like, what was its state? Was it soft? Was it hard? Like, kind of what sensations did you feel from it?
It was hard.
Did it ever enter you?
No, ma'am.
How many times did this kind of stuff happen, would you say?
That I can remember 3 times.
3 times. How did you feel about these things with Jesse?
I didn't really understand it.
You said you were 12, right?
Yes,
Did you guys ever talk about it?
no,
Did he ever say anything about it to you?
no,
Did you ever tell anybody back when it was happening?
no.
Why not?
I was scared of getting him in trouble.
Of getting him in trouble?
So,
When did this, you said you remember it happening about 3 times. When did it stop?
I don't remember exactly when, but he just kind of moved out.
How did you feel about him moving out?
I don't know.
Did you talk to Jesse at all after he moved out?
No.
When's the last time you saw him in person?
A family reunion about 5 years ago. Maybe 4.
Did you guys talk at all then?
No,
When's the last time you spoke to him at all?
before you moved out.
So, what eventually led to you telling anybody about this?
I started to really lose myself. And
How do you mean lose yourself?
I went through a depression because of it, and I ended up in a mental hospital.
Do you remember when that was?
I don't remember dates.
And it's okay. Do you know how old you were?
I want to say 14, maybe.
Okay. So it's at least kind of like a year after this.
Yes.
So while you're in the hospital, you said that you kind of lost yourself, correct? Did you eventually tell anybody what happened to you?
I think I told the counselor there.
At the hospital?
Yes, ma'am.
Did you give her details or did you kind of generally say something?
I generally said something.
What, at that point, had you told your parents or anything?
No,
What happened after you told the counselor that something had happened to you?
an investigation was opened and
Were you taken to be interviewed by anyone?
yes, ma'am.
Do you know where you were taken?
No,
But you said you were about 14 when this happened, correct?
yes, ma'am.
But you were interviewed.
Yes, ma'am.
Do you remember if it was by a man or a woman?
By a man.
Do you happen to remember his name?
Sam, I believe.
Okay. And did you tell Sam what had happened to you?
Yes, ma'am.
Was he the first person? Did you tell him details?
I told him details.
Or was he the first person you told?
Yes, ma'am.
Now, when this happened, do you remember the address you lived at where this happened?
4154 Hunter Sun Drive.
Is that here in Bear County?
Yeah.
How did it feel telling Sam about what all had happened to you?
Relieving.
Just a second. Christine, I'm gonna go ahead and pass the witness and let the defense ask some questions, okay?
Yes, ma'am.
Right, defense?
Judge, could you give me 1 minute, please?
Sure.
Okay, Judge. Hi, Christina. My name is John. I'm Jesse's attorney.
Oh,
I want to make sure I understand your testimony, okay?
yes,
So if it sounds like I'm repeating some questions, I apologize. I just want to make sure I'm clear.
yes,
Okay. And if I ask you something you don't understand, same rules apply. Please let me know. Okay?
yes.
You said the first time that something really happened between you and Jeffy was when he touched you with his hand under your clothes between your legs. Is that correct?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Where were you when that happened again?
I believe living.
In the living room? And you said he also had groped you with his hands on your chest over your clothes?
Yes, sir.
And where did that happen?
I don't remember.
Was it at that house on Hunter's Son?
Yes, sir.
I'm gonna ask a little bit about your family, if you don't mind. You said your mom was working a whole lot
Yes, sir.
at the time? And your dad was not around at the time?
He was around, just. I guess never really involved.
Did your mom and dad ever take trips together?
Yes, sir.
When they would take these trips, were these the times you were left alone with your siblings?
Yes, sir.
Did you have anyone else live in that house with you?
My uncle Lupe, you know him?
And how are you related to the,
He is my uncle.
okay, sorry. Mom's side, dad's side?
My dad's side.
Anybody else?
A couple of my mom's friends.
Anybody else?
No, sir.
When you said a couple of her friends lived there, was it for a long time or a short time?
It varied.
When you talked about the room that was not part of the house, the detached part,
Yes, sir.
I believe you said your brother lived there. Is that correct?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Which brother was this?
Do you want a name?
Yes, please.
Angel Elizondo.
And how old was Angel at the time?
I believe 20.
Did Angel live with you very long?
Yes.
How long?
Up until about 2 years ago.
Was Angel ever asked to leave the house?
And object to relevance at this point.
That'll be overruled.
Um,
To your knowledge?
can you ask again, please?
Yes, ma'am. To your knowledge, was Angel ever asked to leave the house?
No, sir.
Do you ever recall making a statement that your parents left you alone?
Um, No, sir.
Recall making a statement that your parents left you alone while they went to Austin?
Yes, sir.
You recall making a statement that said that you said that your parents, or excuse me, I misspoke, pardon me. Do you recall making a statement that you said that your father got mad at you when he came back from a trip?
No, sir.
Do you recall ever seeing any physical abuse between your parents?
I'm gonna object again to relevance, Your Honor.
If you all could approach.
Christina, let me go back to one of your descriptions of what happened. You said earlier that a knock on the door interrupted the action of what was happening. Is that a fair statement?
Yes, sir.
Was that the first time or the second?
Second.
Second time. And you said nobody came in, correct?
Yes, sir.
And you said Jesse frantically pulled his pants up. Is that correct?
Yes, sir.
What did Jesse do after that?
After whoever was knocking on the door left, Jesse left too.
How soon?
I couldn't say.
Can you estimate? Did he wait or did he just bolt out the door?
He waited, I want to say about maybe a minute or two.
And it's your testimony that nobody came in, it was just a knock at the door, correct?
Yes, sir.
Refresh for me how you described the first time, how it stopped.
I, I believe one of us walked away. I want to say I walked away.
You walked away.
Yes.
And this was the time you're saying he was only touching you, is that correct?
Yes.
And it was the second time where you had your pants down and he had his pants down, correct?
Yes, sir.
I'm just trying to make sure I get my story straight.
Yes, sir.
Now, you also said it happened a third time, correct?
Yes, sir.
Okay. And what happened the third time?
He was on top of me on his bed.
Excuse me, on his bed?
We were on his bed and he was on top of me.
You remember what size bed it was?
King size.
Now, you testified that when you first talked to a counselor, you were in a hospital, correct?
Yes, sir.
And that was not the first time you were in a hospital, was it?
Yes, sir.
That you never previously were hospitalized before?
Um, not for, not in a behavioral health or mental facility.
So to be perfectly clear for everybody,
Okay.
when we're saying you made this report and you were in the hospital, if I understand you right, you're saying you were in a behavioral hospital, is that correct?
Yes.
Okay. How many times have you been admitted to a behavioral hospital?
After that first time, I went in another 2 times.
2 more times after the first?
Yes.
Those 2 other times that you went, were those before or after you met with Sam who interviewed you?
I don't remember.
So it could have been before.
Maybe.
Have you lived in San Antonio your whole life?
Yes, sir. I lived in Houston for like, I wanna say 8 months.
How old were you when that happened, or when you lived there?
Um, Wait,
So you moved to Houston after these allegations came forward? is that
yes,
correct? I'm sorry. Did you ever live in the valley?
um. I don't remember.
Bear with me 1 second. You also testified that you and Jesse kissed. Is that correct?
Yes, sir.
And you stated that you didn't want to say anything because you were scared of getting him in trouble.
Yes, sir.
Why were you scared of getting him in trouble?
I'm not sure.
Did you know you had multiple options at the time to tell somebody?
No, sir.
You were you never informed that you could tell a teacher or a counselor?
I didn't know how to bring that up.
What about a grandparent?
I wasn't close enough to them.
What about your parents?
Um,
You don't know.
I don't know why I didn't tell them.
I'll pass the witness, Judge.
State.
Thank you. Just a few questions, Christina, okay? You said that you didn't want Jesse to get in trouble, correct?
Yes, ma'am.
Did you care about him?
Yes, ma'am.
Did you love him?
Yes, ma'am.
You said that you weren't kind of really sure of what was happening, but you said that it did make you uncomfortable, correct?
Yes, ma'am.
Did you know that it was something he wasn't supposed to be doing?
Yes, ma'am.
Um, how did it feel when you finally told someone? Were you still scared to get him in trouble?
Yes, ma'am.
That's the witness.
All right, any further questions?
Just one briefly, Judge, when you just said you loved him, was that a romantic feeling or was it more of a platonic family feeling?
Platonic family.
That's what it is.
No further questions, Your Honor.
All right, is this witness excused or subject for recall?
Excuse from the state judge.
We'd like her subject to recall, Judge.
All right, state, just make sure defense is able to get in touch with the witness.
Thank you, Judge.
All right, you may step down.
Yeah, you can come back, Christine.
All right, everyone, we're going to take I'm going to give you all a break until 3. So these are my instructions, and I'm going to repeat them so much that you're going to start repeating them back to me. What room did you say? In room 6.
Sit down.
Oh, if you can raise your hand. Do you solemnly swear and affirm the testimony you give will be the truth and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
I do.
All right, you can lower your hand, have a seat. Make sure you keep your voice up so that the members of the jury and the court reporter can hear. If you'll state your name for the record.
My name is David Bierman. It's DavidBierman.
All right, state.
Hey, Detective Bierman, how are you today?
I'm doing well.
And Detective, where are you currently stationed?
So I'm with the city of San Antonio and I'm currently stationed at the sex offender registration detail at this time.
And how long have you been with is there an acronym that's associated with your current division?
So right now it's called SWORD and sex offender registration detail. So that's where I'm at now.
And how long have you been at SWORD for?
Just over a year.
And how long have you been an officer for?
So I've been on the police department for 29 years. And for the last 13 years, I've been a detective. And 12 of those years, I was stationed at the Child Safe Unit, which only handles sexual assaults on children.
Do you mind, Detective, going into a little bit further detail on what exactly is Child Safe?
Okay. So Child Safe is considered to be a child's advocacy center. CAC is what they call them. And what they do is they are a entity that is neutral between the police department and CPS, to where these interviews are by a neutral party. And they primarily focus on forensic interviewing, which is letting the child tell a story as to what happened through an interview. And from those interviews, I can conduct an investigation off those interviews if there's enough probable cause or elements of an offense to further go down an investigation and continue.
And officer, with respect to your 29 years, what kind of training or educational background do you have?
Oh, well, I have a bachelor's degree, but for the last 12 years or 13 years of being a detective, I've learned way more than I ever wanted to know about injury to a child. And a lot of my training and experience comes from personal knowledge of interviews and we've had interviewing schools and nature, such a things like that to I guess build on. But using those skills, I've become a better detective, I feel like.
And how many, over the course of your 13 years as a detective, over that time frame, about how many cases of child sexual assault have you personally worked on?
Okay, well, that's a sad number, but over the 13 year or 12 years, I'd handled over 2,000 cases dealing with children, and I've interviewed, it was 200 and something, 2,000 and something victims and about 1,800 suspects as well. It was quite a bit, a substantial amount.
And of course, you've mentioned the CAC or Child Safe, if you will, but in very general terms, can you maybe provide a timeline of how a case comes to start or comes to be?
Okay, so a crime has to be reported. It may not actually be a crime, maybe a report that leads to a criminal action or something like that. But in this particular case, a report was generated because at Child Safe, 2 children were interviewed, and during those interviews, they were determined that a crime had committed. So they said, "Hey, let's report to this police." So an officer came out from I believe the East Side substation, came out, and he made the general report, just the initial first report. Well, that gets sent up to the Special Victims Unit, and we have a sergeant up there, and he divvies out the cases basically in 3. So I'll end up getting 3 cases. Well, this was a little bit different because it actually, it kind of went out of order because I wasn't assigned to the case when the children had these interviews, and normally I'd be sitting in that interview. So in this particular case, CPS was already looking into a case for the children. And then the crime was reported, and then now they're reporting it to the police, and now I'm just trying to get caught up. So I don't believe I watched these interviews in person at the time they occurred. I watched them later on a DVD that was burned for me later on to get caught up. So once I got caught up, this case then goes into the investigation part of the stage, and I start collecting statements from witnesses and getting the children off to Center for Miracles to get their medical exams done, and just continuing on with my investigation.
So detective, and I know I kind of bifurcated it in some way with respect to general kind of investigative processes, and then this case in particular. You touched on it a little bit, but if I could go back to kind of the origination point, I get the report was made, and so boom, it went to child safe. Is that correct?
So it was brought out from Child Safe, and then since I'm stationed on site at Child Safe, there's only, at that time, there was 2 detectives that worked there. Because I was there, I might as well just handle it, because, you know, I'm the closest detective, and I had relationships with them to where they could just come to me and say, hey, I got this case, can you look at it? If not, can you even take it? And, you know, when I looked at it, if it wasn't given to me by a sergeant, I was gonna get it anyway, so that's how that came out.
So things were said in the child safe interviews that then led someone to basically right there where you were stationed at the time at child safe say, hey, we've had allegations of a crime. You're the detective here. Let's take the next step.
Correct.
And so once that, well, I guess going back actually to this case, do you happen to know, or can you kind of help everybody best understand what allegations were made in those interviews that caused you to be contacted?
All right. And can I have parties approach briefly? I'm gonna have you all step out just for 10 minutes. I hope everybody brought their Fitbit. So, all right, remember my previous instructions, and we're gonna bring you right All right, everyone, please be seated. And state, you may continue.
Thank you, Your Honor. Detective, before we move further, let me just take a quick step back real quick. This is my fault for kind of trying to have my cake and eat it too. You had mentioned earlier the word children. You were talking about cases in general, the 2,000 plus that you've seen in your 13-year career, correct?
Yes,
With respect to this case, we're talking about one complainant, correct?
correct.
After Christina gave her interview and you were notified, what steps did you take in the investigative process?
So the next step is obviously to review the DVD and get a copy of the police report and try to compare notes as to what the interviewer would have relayed to the officer at the scene. I'm not sure if we had body camera back then or not. I probably wouldn't have reviewed it because I'm just going to read it in the report anyway. It's a summarization of everything.
Can I have you slow down, please?
Yes. And so I'm starting to feel like I have a criminal offense here that needs investigation. So I start calling people to see if I can get them to come in for interviews to include the defendant. And I explained, I get some interviews done, and I know the children have gone to, or they're on their way to Center for Miracles to get their medicals done.
And
Excuse me, let me just ask you, because I want the record to be clear. When you say children,
Sorry.
you're talking, no, I just want it to be clear and I want the jurors to understand. When you say children, you're talking in general. I want you to stick to this specific case. Do you understand?
Yes.
All right. So please do not switch back and forth because that may give the jurors the wrong impression. So am I correct in that we're only talking about one child in this case?
absolutely, Judge.
All right, thank you. You may continue.
So this child goes to Center for Miracles and receives her exam, and she gives the same details as what she provided in her interview at ChildSafe. I'm looking for consistency in her statement. I'm looking for other interviews with other people she may have had, and making sure that her details are not, they're similar. They probably won't ever be exact because it's very difficult to continue to say the same thing and possibly remember more as things go on with her recollection of what happened.
And with respect to this complainant, was there a immediate outcry? Was a delayed outcry? To the best of your memory, what was the nature of the complainant's outcry?
So this was a delayed outcry is what we call them. Because I was at that CAC, I normally handle delayed outcries to be even 5 to 10 years later on when the child had recollected what had happened or had a breakdown and something reminded them, or finally they found somebody they could trust and confided in them. So that's normally how I got my cases, was from delayed outcries. And this was a particular instance of a delayed outcry that was, I believe, maybe even 2 years earlier, or had it happened 2 years prior.
And you had mentioned kind of a process of interviews across the spectrum. Did you interview the defendant in this case?
I did interview the defendant. So normally I just I pick up the phone and make a phone call, ask them to come and talk to me. And sometimes I get, what's this about? And I don't know what you're talking about. This was a different type of phone call because I asked him, hey, can you come in and talk to me? And he said, yeah, I'll be right there. And I'm like, okay. And he goes, well, when can we make this appointment? And I said, well, what about tomorrow morning or whatever morning it was going to be? Well, he ended up driving 5 hours to come and.
Your Honor, I would object to a narrative.
Sustained.
So Detective, we'll just break things up nice and slow and piecemeal and we'll work our way through it.
All right.
So you mentioned you had contacted the defendant and immediately he was willing to come in and speak with you.
Yes.
And how do you know he ended up driving 5 hours to get to your office?
So when we got into the interview room, I have to show that the interview was free and voluntary and that I'm not making him come in. And so some of my questions are, so how'd you get here today? And where'd you come from? And he started mentioning where he drove from and to where we're at. And Edinburgh it seems like it's 5 hours from here, unless you're speeding, by high rate of speed. But he would have had to have left his house at like 3 o'clock in the morning to get to my office at 8 a.m. So I just thought that was irregular in my investigation that I noted.
And Detective, you're talking Edinburgh in the valley,
Yes,
so driving up north to get to San Antonio.
correct.
And what was, in your experience, irregular about that behavior?
Well, the one thing is that he didn't ask any questions as to why he was coming to talk to a detective. That was that happens quite a bit, but it was just different. And the fact that he was there at 8 o'clock in the morning to leave that early, that was also different for me I hadn't dealt with something like that.
And then Your Honor, may I approach?
Yes.
Now, Detective, I am showing you what's been pre-marked as State's Exhibit number 1. Do you recognize that document?
Yes, this is what I put together for my investigation. It's called a prosecution guide. It kind of gives an outline of what I'd done in each step or throughout my investigation. It lists people I talked to and things like that.
And now please feel free to use that to refresh your memory, but please do not read directly from it, Officer, Detective. Now, do you remember how your interview with the defendant started after those kind of introductory questions?
Yeah, so one thing as an investigator, I've learned to try to assess body language and there is no scientific proof of anything. It's just all, I guess, training and not training, but experience from my interviews and trying to put everything together. And I noticed right away the defendant had taken this defensive stance with me to where he was guarded. So he's got his arms crossed throughout a majority of the interview. At one time, I saw him open up and I tried to get in and start talking to him, and he closed back up on me shortly after. But there are certain things that people do inherently while they're being talked to or questioned. And a lot of it is guarding themselves with this and maybe even deflecting if they have their hands in a certain position. But I know that this was a different type of interview where people.
Your Honor, I have to object again. It's to a narrative.
Sustained.
Officer, we're just going to break things up. What was different about this interview?
So him being guarded, and it looked like he was on a fishing expedition just to see what kind of information I had to talk about.
Now, Detective, when you mention a fishing expedition, can you kind of further delve into what do you mean by that?
Sorry about that. He was looking to see what charges he was facing or what kind of crime he was looking at, and so he's trying to figure it out.
Object to speculation.
Sustained.
And what charges was he looking at the time?
So in this particular case, it was aggravated sexual assault, which is having some type of penetration with your sex organs, his or hers, with a child under the age of 14.
Can that also include just contact?
So that would be indecency with the child as well, and that would be under the age of 17.
So As you continued your interview with the defendant, did he ever admit to what took place?
He did not. He denied the allegations throughout because eventually during this interview, I tell him what he's being charged with, and he denied that it had happened.
And did he say anything else of note to you throughout the interview that gave you pause or made you question the veracity of what he was telling you? Body language wise.
He again, with his closed off stance, and he kept his head down. He made very little eye contact throughout the interview as well, and that's a hard. It's hard to look at somebody when they're charging you or when they're accusing you of something like that.
And detective, in the course of that interview, did he, even in terms of simple things, admit to living with them at that time?
Oh, yeah. So he did put himself in the environment of during the time the crime had occurred. So he was living with them. He had never spent time with his family, and I think he started in 2016. There was some dates in there that he showed that he was there for several years with his family.
Just a moment of the court's time, Your Honor. Detective, at the end of your investigation, did you come to any conclusions with respect to what crimes had been committed?
Yeah. So at the end of my prosecution guide, I figure out the type of crime that had occurred, and if there's enough probable cause to go forward with the case, I send it to the DA's office. And at this time, I'd felt that there was enough probable cause to show that the defendant had sexually assaulted the complainant.
No further, pass the witness, Your Honor.
Right. Defense?
So detective, you completed an interview with Jesse, correct?
Correct.
Okay, and he came to you,
Yes,
correct?
he did.
He didn't put up a stink or a fight or anything like that to you, correct?
Correct.
About coming?
But no, he did not.
And you did say he denied the allegations completely, correct?
Yes, I did.
I believe, please correct me if I'm wrong. I want to make sure I heard this right. You testified that Jesse was living in this house for several years.
From what my understanding was, I wasn't sure on that.
Okay, that's why I just want to make sure I
Yeah.
heard you right. Thank you. Did you notice, other than the guarded position that you described, did you notice any other mannerisms of Jesse?
Just that he made very little eye contact, and he kept his head down. Like he, he didn't look at me straight on the entire time. Yes.
Is it reasonable for one to be nervous when they're meeting someone from the police department?
Yes, and then that's what I guess
Thank you, detective. That's just either a yes or no. I'll pass the witness.
No further questions, Your Honor.
All right, is this witness excused?
For the state, Your Honor, yes.
And the defense.
All right, you may step down. State, call your next witness.
Actually, before we call our next witness, Your Honor, may we briefly approach?
Yes. You're ready. State, call your next witness.
Your Honor, the state will call Dr. Kellogg.
If you'll raise your right hand, do you solemnly swear and affirm the testimony you give will be the truth and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
I do.
All right, if you'll have a seat, make sure you keep your voice up so that the members of the jury and the court reporter can hear you.
Yes.
All right, thank you. State.
Hi, Dr. Kellogg. How are you today?
Fine, thank you.
And where are you employed?
I am employed by the University of Texas Health Science Center, San Antonio, Department of Pediatrics.
And ma'am, do you have any special accommodations?
I do. I'm hearing impaired. I have a profound hearing loss, so that means I read lips. And I might need people to move closer to speak to me.
And so far, so good?
So far, so good.
Now, ma'am, can you just state again where you're employed?
I am in the place of work with my employer.
The place of work.
I work at Center for Miracles.
And what do you do there?
I am the division chief for the Child Abuse Pediatrics Group. And in that clinic, I have several responsibilities. I see patients that are referred to the clinic for evaluation of possible abuse and neglect. And we also examine patients in the 3 different hospitals in town when we are called to do so. And we review cases online as well.
And how long have you been there for?
I've been doing this work since 1988.
And can you please kind of further explain what a sexual assault nurse examiner is?
A sexual assault nurse examiner is a nurse who's been specially trained according to the curriculum provided by the Office of the Attorney General, and is also required to have yearly competency demonstrated. So they have to do a certain number of exams, and they have to follow those protocols.
And ma'am, can you please walk us through your educational background?
In 1978, I graduated from Dartmouth College. I went to medical school here in San Antonio, and I completed that in 1985. After that, so that was 4 years, and then 3 years of the pediatric residency after that, which was completed in 1988. And then after that point, I became employed by the Department of Pediatrics.
And can you please delve a little further into some of the professional training that a sexual assault nurse examiner needs?
Well, I'm not a sexual assault nurse examiner, so I don't think I can provide a lot of detail for that. I'm a board certified child abuse pediatrician. So what that entails is receiving certification from the American Board of Pediatrics in this specialty.
And how long have you had that for?
I've had it since, I want to say 2009 is when I received that. It was, I was the first medical editor, so I was actually selected by the American Board of Pediatrics to help select and write the examination that people take for it. So I was one of the first people to be certified because I was part of that process.
And with respect to your day-to-day work, what type of work would come through your office where you're employed on a day-to-day basis?
But the combination of patients in the clinic, and I do want to clarify that while I see some of my own patients, I often see patients with our fellows. So we have a fellowship program. It's a 3-year training program. And a lot of our responsibilities are to teach them. So we are with them when they do physical examinations of children that come to Center for Miracles. In addition to that, for example, today I was looking at the online cases that CPS was posting and trying to process those. So it's primarily clinical work. but we also do a fair amount of teaching in the community and teaching in other settings.
Absolutely. And I know you're not a sane examiner yourself, but can you please kind of help describe for the jury and explain what is the purpose of a sane exam in general?
Okay, it's a little bit of a tricky question because there's a protocol for acute sexual abuse assault, and those are typically examined by sexual assault nurse examiners. So those are nurses. And then we have the non-acute cases that come to us at Center for Miracles, and those children are typically examined by the physicians that work there, but we also have one sane nurse that works there, and she sometimes sees patients.
And can you please kind of delve into the difference between acute versus non-acute?
Certainly. So acute is just defined by the timeline. So if a sexual abuse or assault happens, let's say within 96 hours, those patients are supposed to go to Children's Hospital if they're pediatric patients, and they are seen by one of our sexual assault nurse examiners. In that setting, they are looking for different types of evidence than we typically deal with in a non-acute setting.
And what types of evidence do you look for in a non-acute setting?
So at Center for Miracles, we basically have three different things that we're looking for, three categories. So the first is the history. So we take a history from a patient, just like we do in medicine, and that helps us decide the next steps, what we need to do. It helps us with diagnosis and treatment. After the history, based on the history, we decide what sexually transmitted infections are appropriate to test for. And sometimes it's not any infections, but sometimes we do test for infections. And then, so we have the history, we have the examination, and we have the sexually transmitted disease testing. So those are the three main components that we address when they come to Center for Miracles.
And does the fact that someone delays their outcry play into why they would end up at Center for Miracles?
Yeah.
How frequently do people delay their outcry?
It's very common.
And to your training and experience examining histories, why may that be?
The most common reasons that children tend to delay disclosure is fear of what will happen when they tell. They're worried about not being believed. They're worried about disrupting the family. Some of what they worry about depends on who's involved in the sexual abuse. If it's a family member, then there are things like, how will this affect the family? I don't want to be blamed for this. So each person is kind of individual in terms of that. Some children blame themselves for what happened, and that's why they delay. They feel like it's their fault because they let it go on. So there's a lot of different reasons why they might delay disclosure.
And with respect to the examinations done at Center for Miracles, again, you mentioned that was one of the three things that's part of the process. With the examination part, what are the findings that can be done in the examination?
Well, we do a head to toe examination. So we're not just focused on the genitals and the anus. We do head to toe. We look for signs of self-injury. Sometimes we see adolescents that are cutting. We cutting themselves. And so we do look for those signs. We kind of attend to the whole child because if they have medical issues that pertain to the practice of pediatrics, we try to address them on a physical exam. The genital exam is a detailed exam. We have an instrument called a colposcope. I explained to my patients, it's like a microscope, but it's just much bigger. It doesn't touch them, it's just a light. It's a way of seeing the genitals and looking for any very small injuries. So we do use that when we are examining the genitals and the anus. We place patients in specific positions depending on their size and their age to conduct that examination. And during the examination, We will typically collect swabs for STD testing, sexually transmitted disease testing, depending again on the history that we've received.
And is that exam invasive?
Well, it's not invasive in the terms of putting a speculum inside of females. It's not that type of exam. But nobody wants to do it on their day off. I'll put it to you that way.
And can the complainants that come in, can they refuse to do the physical examination?
Yes, they can.
And why does the Center for Miracles provide that agency? Why do they provide that choice?
Because that's all about trauma-informed care. And we were certified in trauma-informed care. We received that certification last year, but the patient comes first, and we understand and respect that the traumatic experiences that they have can be further worsened by the experience of having a genital exam. So we do respect that. When I have a patient, I always have plan A, B, C, and D. So if they're not going to agree to the exam at all, well, I can get a urine and check for infections that way. So I do try to figure out what the choices are. But it's very much a cooperative choice. We're not going to force patients through any part of the exam.
And Dr. Kellogg, do you know why we're here today
Why we're here today?
for this case?
I do know that, or I expect that we're discussing the specific exam findings of a patient that was seen by one of our fellows in 2020.
And do you oversee some of those processes or examinations?
Yes, I do. I was her faculty backup. Dr. Sabo was the one who conducted the entire exam. I was not present for her history, but I was present for the complete examination.
Your Honor, may I approach?
Yes.
Just one moment now. So, ma'am, do you recognize what I've just handed you?
You give me a moment?
Yes, absolutely.
Yes, I do recognize it.
Just a moment of the court's time, Your Honor.
Yes. And could parties approach, please? State, you may continue.
Now, Doctor, I've handed you what's been pre-marked as State's Exhibit number 2.
Yeah.
Please do not read directly from it. Please only use it to refresh your memory, Doctor.
Yes, sir.
Now, doctor, who is this report done with respect to? Who is the individual examined, in other words?
Christina Hinojo.
And in very general terms, more yes or no, did she provide a history?
Yeah,
And did she consent to a physical examination?
yeah.
When was the exam done?
I'm sorry.
I apologize. With respect to the date, do you know when this exam took place?
Yes, it was done January 21st of 2020.
And to your knowledge, is this a case that involved a delayed outcry?
Yes, to my knowledge.
And with respect to a normal finding that can come about in reports, can you please explain what a normal finding means?
Normal finding with respect to physical examination.
Yes.
Well, normal can, in the context of a sexual abuse examination, normal exam means one of three things. Either abuse may have occurred and not resulted in any visible injury, so there's nothing left to see at that point. Abuse occurred, it did result in visible injury, which is healed completely and is no longer visible, or no abuse occurred.
Just one more moment again at the court's time, Your Honor. Now, did the individual examined, Christina, maintain that sexual abuse had occurred?
Yeah,
And regardless of the timeline, let me rephrase. Even if this had been an outcry directly after events took place, is that dispositive of any type of evidence gathering?
I'm not sure what your question is.
In these types of examinations, is it more common or uncommon to find evidence on that person?
Overall, it's more common to have a normal exam or no trauma. I would say that it's more common to see some types of acute evidence if they present within that 96 hours.
And outside of that 96 hours, what is your most common, in your professional experience, finding, or what usually do you see, again, in non-acute examinations?
The vast majority are completely normal examinations.
Was this a normal examination?
The vast majority are normal examinations.
And with respect to this case, does that fall in line with that?
Yes,
No further questions, Your Honor.
All right, defense?
Could I have a moment of the court's time, Judge?
Sure.
Okay, sorry about that.
Oh, no problem.
Good afternoon, Dr. Kellogg. Can you hear me okay?
I can, if you can slow a little bit.
I'll slow down. Would be better to.
Yeah, if you move that.
Maybe. Okay, let's try that. Any better?
That's fine. It, again, the speed of your speech and being able to see you will be more important for me.
Okay, I will do my best. If I'm going too fast, please tell me.
I will, thank you.
Dr. Kellogg, I understand that you said Dr. Sabo did the initial evaluation on this.
She did the entire evaluation. So she took a history from the patient and did the exam. I was present and verified all of her physical exam findings.
Did you review the entire report, including the history?
Yes,
Okay. And you approved the report for filing, is that correct?
yes, I did.
Okay. So is it fair to say you have knowledge of the history?
Knowledge only in terms of what's documented. And I guess before we do the exam, the fellows typically come and present the patient to me. So they give me a summary. And that way we make the plan together for what the next steps are.
When someone comes in for an evaluation and they're giving their history, is there any independent fact checking done on that history?
So I guess are you asking, like, does the physician go and try to talk with other individuals to cross-check information? Is that what you? No, they do not do that.
So is it fair to say that you are relying on the patient's truthfulness in making decisions?
Yes,
And you have no way of knowing if someone is truly being truthful or not, do you?
we can have an opinion about it. If the history seems reliable, the fact that we make a plan of what to do for medical and mental health needs means that we think the history is reliable or truthful.
What sort of things do you look at in the history?
Well, you're talking in general
Yes.
now? Okay, so mostly if they can give us some details about what happened. Sometimes we don't focus on a lot of the details that are in a forensic interview. We are more interested in the types of sexual contact that occurred. What did that feel like? You know, did they have any pain? Did they have any bleeding? Did they have any symptoms afterwards? Those are the things that we're focused on. But we also gather history for life experiences that can affect their mental health. So we're very much focused on both things, on both medical as well as mental health issues.
May I approach you?
Yes.
Dr. Kellogg, I've turned to a page on that report I'd like you to take a look at to refresh your memory, if you don't mind.
Read the whole page?
No, ma'am, not necessarily the whole page, but I'd like you to look at the bottom of the page.
Okay.
In the history that was done for Christina, were there any concerns about her?
Objection, attempting to elicit hearsay, Your Honor.
Let me hear the question.
Say, were there any concerns about physical or mental well-being based on what was presented to you?
All right, that'll be overruled. You can answer the question. I'm sorry,
can
you may
answer.
answer the question.
Okay. Yes, there were concerns for her mental health,
What were those concerns?
thoughts of hurting herself.
What about others?
Well, you want me to, I'm not sure what you're asking. When somebody has thoughts of self-injury, we recommend a crisis assessment by the social worker at the clinic, which was done in this case.
Were any self-harming behaviors noted by Christina?
By Christina, by,
By the patient, yes, ma'am.
okay, can you give me a moment to,
Absolutely.
she did indicate that she felt like hurting herself at the time that she was evaluated.
Can you explain what a homicidal ideation is?
Yes, it's a desire to hurt other people.
Did Christina present any of those?
Yes, she did.
Your Honor, may we approach you this?
Yes. All right, ladies and gentlemen, I'm gonna have you all step out briefly. There's a matter I need to take up outside your presence. Remember my previous instructions, you're not allowed to start deliberating with each other or internally with yourself. And everything that you need to know about this case is to come from. Thank you. See, pretty soon you're all gonna say that. All right, but it's to come from inside the courtroom. Does everyone understand? All right, everyone, please rise for the jurors. The door's not crazy.
Progress.
Thank you.
Maybe it's a sign.
All right, everyone, please be seated. So defense, I'm going to allow you to ask your questions so that you can make a record, and then I'll be able to determine whether or not it's admissible. Okay? And for the record, this is outside the presence of the jury. All right, defense, you may ask your questions.
Dr. Kellogg, you said the history also includes things having to do with CPS. Is that correct?
I didn't testify about CPS yet.
Okay, did I completely misstate that?
I don't recall having any question about CPS up until now.
Would a history contain items from Child Protective Services?
Does the history contain items?
Correct.
I'm not exactly, this is just the medical record. It doesn't have CPS documentation in this. Maybe I'm not understanding your question. It's whether you mean the patient said something about CPS or,
Let me try it a little bit differently, okay? Page. On the sheet in front of you, I believe it'll be your page 3.
okay.
Okay. Under social history. There are several items there listing references to CPS.
Okay, you mean maybe page 4 of my document?
May I approach Judge just
Yes.
make sure we're all on the same page?
Okay. This is page,
Literally.
Yeah, it should be page 4.
Is it page 4?
this is page 3.
Yours is page 4. Okay, page 4, where it says social history, the paragraph for social history.
Yeah,
There's several references to events having to do with CPS.
can I take a moment?
Absolutely.
Yes, there are references that were made by the patient about prior CPS involvement with the family.
Those references are only based on what the patient is telling you, correct?
Correct.
Okay. When you review these records that your fellows are doing for you, strike that question. Put it this way. Is it significant to you when you review these that everything be listed in the social history, including all instances involving CPS?
We take the social history from the patient and we record what they tell us. That's the extent that it goes. If they can't remember something, it would not be documented.
If there was a prior allegation of abuse that was not disclosed, would that affect anything in this record?
I think it's a very individual So in other words, if we're evaluating a child for sexual abuse and there is a prior allegation of sexual abuse that was not reported, that might be relevant to us.
How so?
Because if, again, depends totally on the situation. If it's somebody who lives in the home with them and it was disclosed by the patient previously to someone who didn't report, the concern for us would be that the child was not protected from that. But in terms of other types of abuse that might have been reported or neglect, it's again a case-by-case basis. Normally, though, the details for those referrals would not be specifically helpful in the sexual abuse evaluation.
So hypothetically, if a patient came to you and said, in addition to everything I've already said, I was also abused by Joe, Pete, and Tom, and those were unfounded, would that have any influence on the decisions made in this report?
Again, I need more specifics to comment on that, but it just depends. I don't know. You know, if you're talking about physical abuse, for example, okay, no, it would not have any impact on our assessment of her for sexual abuse. It wouldn't have any impact on our diagnosis and treatment. If you're talking about sexual abuse by 3 different individuals that happened before, the most important that would have for us is knowing that when we test her for sexually transmitted diseases, we probably cannot tell you who gave it to her if she has a positive test.
Judge, we're all done. We'll withdraw that request.
Okay.
We're going.
All right, then, let's bring the jurors in.
For landmark first.
You ready?
All rise for the jury.
All right, everyone, please be seated. And defense.
Dr. Kellogg, thank you for your patience with me. My mom wanted me to be a doctor and it just didn't turn out that way. So. Going back to the physical exam, just to make sure I've got it right. You said it was a normal exam that was reported?
Yes, she had a little bit of discharge, but there were no sexually transmitted infections when we tested her. So I consider that normal.
Okay. So her labia appeared normal,
Yes,
her hymen,
yes,
perineum, Her
perineum, yes,
sorry if I mispronounced that. Her anus,
yes,
the clitoral hood.
yes.
And because of things like that being normal, I believe you said that could be indicative of abuse or not abuse.
By itself, yes.
So in essence, the report says physically it's inconclusive.
Objection testifying, Your Honor.
That'll be overruled. You
Well,
can answer the question.
okay, I mean, the assessment, if you give me a moment,
Absolutely.
I mean, Dr. Sabo indicated it's a normal physical examination. It wasn't inconclusive. Inconclusive to me, we don't know if it's normal or abnormal. This was a normal examination.
Okay, well, let me rephrase the question. In terms of the physical examination being a link to seeing, hey, there's sexual abuse, or there could have been consensual sexual abuse, or there's no sexual abuse, the physical examination can't actually say one way or the other.
It did not let us know which of those three possibilities were the most likely.
I'll pass the witness, Judge.
State.
Just a couple follow-up questions, Dr. Kellogg. First, how common is homicidal or suicidal ideation in patients that you see at the center?
Well, self-injury, thoughts of self-harm are actually, unfortunately, more common than we've seen in the past, if you will. The homicidal ideations are not as common. Those are pretty uncommon in my experience.
And with respect to the possibilities, the three possibilities that counsel just asked you on cross-examination, again, I want to be clear. With non-acute exams, how common is a normal finding?
More than 90% are normal.
No further questions, Your Honor.
Defense.
Well, then, Doctor, just to clarify then, the only thing from the report, if I understand this right, the only thing from the report that could signify whether some sort of sexual abuse happened was from the history.
Correct.
That's what it is.
No further questions, Your Honor.
All right, is this witness excused?
Excuse for the state, Your Honor.
Yes, Your Honor, she is.
All right, you may step down. Thank you. Yes, just leave that there.
Thank you.
And state, is this your last witness for today?
For today, yes, Judge.
All right, ladies and gentlemen. What I anticipate is the state may have one more witness, and then we will go from there. But if you all could perhaps start thinking about whether or not you want to remain later on Friday or not, because Monday is a holiday. So just start thinking about that individually, and collectively, you can make a decision about whether or not as a group you all want to stay late on Friday. Does everyone understand? So I have a docket tomorrow. So I'm going to put you all at 1:30 again tomorrow. And remember my instructions about being able to have space at the parking garage. Probably best to show up by 12:15. I hope no one had any issues with finding a space. Okay. Any questions before I release you? So I'm going to send you off with my instructions. Make sure you wear your badge so that people will know you're a member of this jury, because sometimes people will talk about different cases, but if they see your badge, they'll normally stop talking about it. If somebody asks you if you're on a jury, you can tell them you're on a jury, but do not talk about this case. Do not watch anything about this case. If something were to occur where you see something about this case, turn it off. If somebody tries to ask you about any specifics of this case, let them know that I've told you you're not allowed to discuss it, if that helps you. The other thing is, do not do any investigation on this case. Everything that you need to know about this case is to come from. Okay, see, I'm still, you guys still, tomorrow you all will do it. Everything that you need to know about this case is to come from inside the courtroom. Does everyone understand? All right, so based upon the time, you're going to beat the rush hour traffic. All right, everyone, please rise for the jurors. And Brian, you can close your record. Oh,
I know, they paid attention.
all right. So, oh, please be seated. So this is what I'm anticipating. States, you say you have just one more witness.
Yes, Judge.
So defense, if you're able to have your witness here tomorrow, great. If you're not able to have your witness here tomorrow, if you decide to call any witnesses, just let me know and we can have them come on Friday. But if you can, if you're planning on calling witness, see if they can come tomorrow.
If we can get them tomorrow, we'll get them tomorrow.
Okay. All right.
I will let you know, Judge. for
Thank
sure.
you. And I don't know if the jury is going to make a decision to stay late on Friday. I don't know if they're deliberating, if anyone is planning on sequestering the
Oh,
jury or not.
absolutely, Judge.
So,
3 full days, Your Honor.
yeah. So just let me know because, because we're going to have a long weekend. I don't think the jurors want to come back here on Monday. Well, no, I mean Monday. I know Monday is a holiday. I don't know particularly that they would like to come back on Monday because usually when it's a holiday, people want to take advantage of that. I can always ask them that and see if they want to. So that's just something to think about. All right, is there anything else we need to take up before we close down? All right, so we'll be back on this jury trial tomorrow at 1:30. And for our morning docket, everyone, I will be here. I'm going to try to be here at 9:30, but it'll be more like 10.
Okay, Judge.
Dealing with contractors, right?
Say all your stuff.
Yes, I'm like, I desperately want to move back to my home.
Okay.
So, but everybody's going to be here at 9, so everybody can come first. So hopefully when I come in, everything will be ready. And if there's any pleas that need to be taken care of, we can just take care of them very quickly.
Absolutely, Judge.
And I've already told Ms. Ferguson that we will still be recessing tomorrow at noon, so everybody can have their lunch break.
Thank you, Judge.
All right, thank you, everyone.
Hey, what kind of